November 1st, 1982. This is Joe Todd. Interview with Miss Kitty Sturdevant. Miss Kitty Sturdevant. Miss Sturdevant, when were you born?
I was born in Cyclone, Bell County, Texas, September 10th, 1890. Cyclone is a small village close to Temple, Texas. My father had he had a cotton gin there at the time. Then we moved into Temple, and I attended school there until 1902. We moved to Oklahoma, to Shawnee, Oklahoma.
What was Temple like when you lived there?
Well, I doubt if it had as many as 10,000 people. We had a superintendent of school called Professor Blair, and every year he gave a gold medal to the student who did elocutionary work to his best satisfaction. And I got one in 1897. I gave there were others besides me. Of course, I was only 7 years old, but there were a number of other much older students. I used Daisy's Faith. That's a poem and set up on the stage with a bunch of daisies in my hand and gave it, and I got it. My parents were so proud of me because that time it was elocution.
What were your parents' names?
Who?
What were your parents' names?
Father's name was Charles Sturdevant, and mother Mary Alice. She was Mary Alice too before she married, so I'm Irish to some extent.
Right. Were they both from Bell County, Texas?
Yes.
You moved to Oklahoma in 1902?
1902, moved to Shawnee.
How did you move to Texas? What method? How did you move to Oklahoma?
Oh, I came on the train.
On the train.
Okay. Father came up here several months earlier, and we came on the train.
What was your first impression of Shawnee?
Well, we were so glad to get up here and real excited about it. It was just a small place. Father had what was then called a wagon yard, and we had a small hotel across the street. So we were just interested. And I entered school there and graduated from Shawnee High School in 1908. I think it was my senior year, the Shawnee High School installed what was called a commercial course, teaching bookkeeping and shorthand. And so I took that. And as shown in that Harlow's article, I became employed with Leidick and Eggerman. As in those days we were called stenographers. They're secretaries now, but we were stenographers then. And after about a year, they got me interested in studying to be a lawyer. My father uncle had two uncles in Illinois. His parents were from Illinois, and they had a law school, taught two of the lawyers who were in Shawnee, Mark Good and Leanda Pittman. So when I got started in a correspondence course, both of those fellows became very interested and helped me. And in fact, nearly all the lawyers in Shawnee, from time to time, would come in and talk to me and get interested. You see, in those days, we didn't have jury continuously, just had jury about a month to 6 weeks, twice a year. So we had time to do a little visiting around, and there were several lawyers there who didn't give a hoot whether I ever finished or not, or were not interested in having a female join their profession. But most of them really took a great deal of interest, and I really had sort of private instruction all the time because they helped me, that even the judges were interested. I know I would never have finished if they hadn't been so encouraging.
Mm-hmm. When did you go to law school?
Me, law school? I always went to that University of Hard Knocks, man. That's all.
So you had no formal law training?
I had the formal law training of that correspondence course, and the lawyers there in Shawnee that kept coming in and helping me out, and Mark Good and Judge Pittman, who had studied with my father's uncles. Mm-hmm. They helped me all along. I had private instruction.
When did you begin practicing law as a lawyer?
With that firm. See, I was admitted in 1912. And so I was working with Leidick and Eggerman then, and so I just started in practicing with them. Mm-hmm. They had a good deal of bankruptcy and damage suits. I was never particularly interested in trying cases. Mr. Leidick was a very capable trial lawyer, and I enjoyed helping prepare them, working out briefing. Mm-hmm. So I didn't try cases unless I just had to. Mm-hmm. Then we moved to Oklahoma City in 1924. Mr. Leidick became a partner with us, Leidick and McFerrin.
Where was your law office located in Shawnee? What was the street address?
Well, now we started out in what was called the Mammoth Building. That was the 4th floor of a department store, or building that had the department store. Then we moved to the National Bank of Commerce. Had some offices on the ground floor next to their bank, and we were attorneys for the bank, so we moved there.
In 1912, did you have a bar exam you have to take to be admitted?
Yes, I took the bar examination up here in Oklahoma City. It lasted 3 days, and it sure was nerve-wracking. The last subject was domestic relations under common law. And under common law, it's unlawful for a man to marry the sister of his deceased wife. Well, this list of questions, the very last question of this very last subject, when all of us were tired and weary, had a trick question that said, is it under common law, is it lawful for a man to marry his widowed sister? Well, the good Lord looked after me, I guess, because I thought, there can't be any marriage between a ghost and spirit of a man, and that's what I wrote. So when I took my answer up, I noticed the man who had charge of the examination, he'd look at every time the student finished and took up his papers, he'd look and kind of smile or do something. So I took mine up and he just chuckled real good. I think maybe that the fact that I caught that may have been one of the reasons why I got the honor of getting the highest grade in the examination, because we had a lot of university students. I think that was the first year that the OU law school students joined in the examination. I know several of them were disgusted with themselves because they hadn't noticed that a man couldn't have a widow if he was not a common law. Their divorces weren't allowed.
What were some of the most famous cases that you worked on in your first days?
Oh. Around 19 and I don't know, it's 29, 30, somewhere along in there. There were a series of impeachment proceedings against the court. Our firm represented Judge Mason, and I helped on that. I can't say we had famous cases. They were just ordinary, in the ordinary course. We had damage suits that were exciting at the time we took, but nothing downright sensational. Mm-hmm. I'm not a real sensational person.
Oh, I think you are.
I just, every case seems interesting and is important to the client, and I do the best I can on that particular case. For a number of years, I've been handling estates more of deceased persons, and that's not real exciting, but it's interesting and paid good money.
Mm-hmm. When you first joined the law firm as a stenographer, what were your major duties?
What
were your major duties when you first joined the law firm as a stenographer?
Taking the dictation that there were two members of the firm, and they gave me dictation. All I did was take the dictation, write it out. I was just a stenographer. And then after I'd been there a little while, I became advised as to how to keep a record of the days that we were to have pleadings filed so we wouldn't be in default, days when the cases were to be tried and handled, and whatever was routine in the office. We had some practice in those days in the justice court, and particularly in between jury terms. We also had Indian titles, cases involving Indian titles, but I don't remember. There's nothing that became of historical interest. They were just cases involving real estate and important to the particular client, but after that case was over, it was over. In those days, Indian titles were very important.
Whenever they were attempting to move the capital from Guthrie to Oklahoma City, wasn't Shawnee at one time considered to be the capital?
I think so, but the big fight was between Tecumseh and Shawnee for county seat.
For county seat? Were you involved in that in any way?
Yes, well, in a way. At that time, Mr. Leidick was secretary of the county election board. And our offices, of course, were in Shawnee. And he was very interested and hopeful that the election would result in favor of Shawnee. And it finally did. We were in that. At that time, there was Mrs. Webb, I believe her name was, conducted a dining room in Tecumseh, where all the lawyers would go to eat. Oh, she had delicious food. During the time when they had to go to Tecumseh for business. Well, after Tecumseh lost out, she refused to feed anybody from Shawnee. And that was a hardship because there wasn't any place else over there that fed. Some of the folk, 2 or 3 of the lawyers went in to her and said, "Oh, now you're not going to refuse to feed me. You know I've been eating here for years. I will not feed anybody from Shawnee, supported Shawnee." She didn't either. So you can tell the intensity that was presented in that fight.
What year was that?
Oh, gosh. I'd have to check back. I don't know.
How big was Tecumseh and how big was Shawnee when this was going on?
Tecumseh was about, I don't think it had more than 3,000 people at that time. In fact, I don't know if it had that much. Just had one street, one main street.
And how big was Shawnee?
I guess then we had about 15,000. Now, I haven't thought of the size of those places for so long. I'm not dependable on that subject.
Do you remember when St. Gregorys College, rephrase that. When was St. Gregorys College founded in Shawnee?
We had St. Gregorys, and we also have the Baptist University there. I don't know what years, but they were both there when I left in 1924.
Were they there when you first moved to Shawnee?
Oh no, they I think that they came after 1915, later probably. I don't know what years they were. Mm-hmm. That I don't recall right now. I'd have to check up and see.
Do you remember Statehood Day?
Remember what?
Statehood Day, November 16th, 1907.
1907, oh yes, we rang up and down Main Street in Shawnee and rang the bells and all excited.
Okay. You didn't go to Guthrie then for Statehood Day?
No, I didn't go to Guthrie for Statehood. That's when I was still in high school, 1907, November 1907. And I was still in high school, so I didn't go to Guthrie. Shawnee would like to have been the capital, but we didn't.
Because I believe in the election, the cities listed were Oklahoma City, Guthrie, and Shawnee. Is that correct?
I think so, as well as I remember, but that's... See, that was after 1907.
Right, this was in 1910, I believe, when they had the election for the state capital.
Well, it must, I know it was not 1907. It was after that when we had the fight for county seat, too. Shawnee really didn't have any chance for that. They did. That was wishful thinking.
You say that you ran up and down the streets and rang the bells on Statehood
we
Day?
rang cowbells and rang up and down the street celebrating.
How would you compare being a lawyer today to being a lawyer in 1912?
Well, in 1912, when I went out to go to, we walked our places, other places that didn't know me, and they found out there's going to be a woman lawyer. Folks from throughout the courthouse would be coming to the door and watching. Now they pay no attention. We have hundreds of dozens of women lawyers and pay no more attention to a woman lawyer than do to a man.
How did you feel when President Reagan nominated a woman to the U.S. Supreme Court?
I was very grateful that he selected a capable, a competent woman. I know that there was a competent woman to be selected, I guess is what I should say. She's Justice O'Connor's an unusually capable person. And I was grateful that he was able to, he selected her, but the main thing is I wanted a capable person for the job and a more conservative than what we had on. That pleased me too.
Yes. How long have you practiced law?
Since 1912.
Are you still practicing today?
Oh, some. I don't have take on any new clients. I just finish up with the ones that are still living.
Yeah.
Some of them, most of them have died off and then I have their children, but as they depart this world, then I don't try to take on any additional ones. In the last 5 or 6 years, it's been mostly estates and real estate matter. I'm not very interested in attempting to try jury cases or other cases. Have more probate matters.
Were you involved anyway in some of the impeachment trials of the governors of Oklahoma? Governor Walton, Governor Murray?
Not of Governor Murray. Her association at that time was really with Governor Trapp rather than Walton. We were representing Trapp, who was the lieutenant governor and became governor when Walton left.
Okay. Were you
associated? It was not exactly trial work. I think that was just politics.
Okay, so you were associated with Governor Trapp?
We were for Governor Trapp. Gosh, I'd forgotten about that. That's been a long time ago. Then in about 1930, I left the firm of Leidick and Wilson. He was associated with, or no, Wilson had died. And I had a firm, McGee and Sturdevant for a while. Then Mr. McGee died in 1935, and Mrs. Ruby Turner Looper and I formed a partnership in 1936. Our office was in what's now the Oil and Gas Building, but was then the Liberty National Bank and Trust Company. And we practiced together until 1950, when she died. And since then, I've just been by myself.
Did you keep the same office?
I did for a while, and then when she died, we were in what was called the Tradesmen's National Bank on the 6th floor, and then I went down to the 3rd floor and stayed in that same building. Tradesmen's National Bank building became the City National Bank building. Then it became Boston building. And now it's been renovated and it's called the Civic Center.
What was your impression of Oklahoma City when you first came?
Well, I was interested in the city. Of course, we'd had experience up here in our practice from Shawnee. We had to come up here a good deal. In Shawnee, the practice was mostly at the courthouse. Then they began to have administrative departments, and we were here on a Supreme Court cases and things of that kind. And I was interested in the city. One of the things that disgusted me was when I first came up here and started looking for an apartment or a place to stay, many of them said, no, we don't take single women. But I found a place.
Where was
now
that?
They're eager to have single women or anybody else.
Right.
It's just a change in the thought of the day.
Yes, it is. Where was your law office when you first came to Oklahoma City? Where did you locate?
In the Tradesman's National Bank building I've forgotten what floor it was on. Then we moved to the Braniff building. We don't have any Braniff building now, but it was Braniff building at 3rd and Robinson. And was there until I went to the Liberty National.
Did you know Mr. Braniff? T.E. Braniff?
Yes, but we never represented him.
Mm-hmm.
I knew him. We've met him in different places, business meeting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just haven't been a bit sensational.
I still think you're a sensational person.
See, we just went from day to day taking care of what came up. In those days, we just took everything that came in the door, but now, the lawyers are specializing a great deal, which is reasonable because we have so many different boards and commissions to practice before.
In the 1930s, during the Dust Bowl.
What's that?
During the Dust Bowl in the 30s, what were the main type of case that you took on in the 30s when all the Okies were moving to California?
Well, see, we got the oil business here in Oklahoma City started about 1928. So in 1930, we had enough business on titles to take care of us.
Mm-hmm. So you survived the Depression then?
And the Depression didn't bother us nearly as much as it did in some areas. We had enough to keep us going.
Mm-hmm.
The dust would come in our houses. All right, we hadn't any way of keeping the dust out. But we had enough business to take care of our expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the oil business, I don't know what we would have done if it hadn't been the oil business.
Mm-hmm. Did you take on any cases during the Prohibition era?
I've never handled criminal cases.
Oh, you've never handled criminal, okay.
Mr. Leidick tried a few criminal cases, but he preferred civil.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We had bankruptcy matters. In those days, they were representing creditors in bankruptcy cases was a profitable business.
Did you handle many bankruptcy cases
Yes, we had.
after in '29 when the stock market crashed?
No, I was up here in Oklahoma City. It was when we were in Shawnee we handled those bankruptcy cases mostly. But by the time of the stock market crash, we were busy handling titles to lost real estate and working up oil business. Didn't have much bankruptcy.
Right. Was this mainly in the Oklahoma City oil field that
Yes.
you were working? Okay. Did you handle any titles in the other oil fields in Oklahoma?
Oh, we handled some down in Seminole and Pottawatomie County and Oklahoma County. That's about the extent of our experience.
But nothing like Glen Pool or Garber Covington?
That's about the extent of our experience.
But nothing like Glen Pool or Garber Covington in
No.
those oil fields? Okay. Were you involved in the Wild Mary Sudic oil well?
No, just as an observer.
What did you think of it? What was your impression of it?
Well, we were very excited at having such a thing and grateful that it showed there was oil in this community.
Did you go out and watch the gusher after it blew?
We got as near as I could.
How close was that?
Oh, I don't know. I really don't know how close it was.
But you could see the gusher.
I could see it. For a little while, it didn't stay very long. Too many other people coming in.
What was your reaction when they brought in the discovery well, the first well in the Oklahoma City oil field?
But just grateful that it was there.
Okay, at that time, were you working with the titles then when they made the discovery well? That was in 1927? Or was it 23, the discovery well?
27 or 8,
Okay.
somewhere along it. We had some business supplying oil business, oil well folks. I didn't have any interest in the discovery well or the operators of the discovery well.
You know, that's belongs to the state of Oklahoma now. Belongs to the Historical Society.
Yeah.
You joined the Historical Society.
What's that?
You did join the Historical
yes, I
Society.
was.
What year did you join?
I've joined from time to time, I think, and then I'd drop out. I believe the last time about 3 years ago, I think.
Okay. When you first moved to Shawnee, did you travel around the area much?
Did what?
When you first moved to Shawnee in 1902, did you travel around the area much at all?
No, after when I was in high school, my sister was engaged to a man who enjoyed hunting, and I used to travel around with them. And when they went hunting, but I didn't have enough money to do running around. We had to. We didn't have any horses of our own.
You didn't have
We
an
didn't do as much traveling in those days as folks do now.
was your father in cotton in Shawnee?
You know, he was running a wagon lot. See, in those days, in those early days, the farmers and orchard men from Prague and around would bring in their products, and they'd come by horses. They brought in wonderful fruit, and then they'd stay on the wagon lot all day, all night, and leave the next day. So that was a good deal of business to have the farmers and orchard men bringing in their crops in Shawnee.
Now, the wagon lot is where they would spend the night?
Well, they wouldn't. They'd spend the night in the hotel, but their horses and wagons would stay in the wagon lot.
Kind of like a livery stable?
Yeah. Garage.
When did you get your first automobile?
Me?
Yeah.
My first automobile was a Ford Coupe.
What year?
Oh, golly. Let me see. That was when I was in Shawnee. My nephew was about 10 years old. I took him riding and I was so scared I was going to kill him or something that I drove so slow. He said, "Aunt Kitty, can't you drive a little faster?" I guess it was about 18 or 19. No, I went to New York then. I guess it's about 1920s after I got back from New York. In 1919, I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York for 6 months as a vacation. And I believe it was about after I got back there that I got that car. Oh, I had it all dolled up with curtains around.
When did your parents get their first automobile?
When my parents,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't. My mother died in 1910. We didn't have any automobile then. And father's died went to Arkansas, and he died in 1917, so he didn't have any automobile.
Mm-hmm. What did you do during World War I?
During World War I, the lawyers were arranged in public for speeches. We went up and down around Pottawatomie County, giving talks on trying to raise bonds, sell bonds. That's what most of us did. I didn't do any Rosie Riveter for the World War I.
Mm-hmm. Did you work in the canteens at all?
Oh yeah, you mean what kind of campaigns?
The canteens for the soldiers.
Oh yes, we go and try to entertain them.
How did you entertain the soldiers?
Well, see, I was studying dramatic art and giving our elocution, as we're sometimes called. So I would try to give some funny speech of various kinds. We tried to entertain them in that way, just.
Was this in Shawnee?
Around in Shawnee and the area there.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have any camp in Shawnee. We were raising money trying to raise money
mm-hmm.
and things to send to camp. But when the boys were called up and they'd come in for the train to be taken away, while we'd always go down and try to furnish sandwiches or something.
Mm-hmm. Was there a regular canteen for the soldiers in Shawnee at that time? Kind of like at the USO?
No, we didn't have a camp for them, you see.
Okay.
It was just, when they were called up, we'd help them to get started.
Right. Okay. Did you do any knitting during the war?
What?
You do any knitting during the war?
No. Knitting is something, I won't touch it either. I don't like knitting. We'd make speeches about what to do, and I was trying to stress to them, to the women places where I went, to save space, multiply whatever they could to use so that it wouldn't take up space in transportation, to save transportation time. When I was growing up, our punishment was to do a stint of hem stitching or Mexican grown work, and the needle just makes me nervous. I just don't like it, so I never knitted.
Right.
I had to do my contribution by talking.
Do you remember the Spanish-American War?
No.
1898, 1899.
No, I don't remember that.
Okay. What did you do during World War II?
Well, I was up here, and about the only thing I did was help with the draft. All the lawyers helped in the filling out the draft, and we'd make talks around different places. I wasn't a Rosa Riveter there either.
So you gave talks during both wars?
Just talking.
Okay. Did you give talks to raise money during World War II? The bond drives?
Yes, and around groups. I didn't just go wild about it. I belonged to a business professional women's club. That's the town club. And we did a deal of work in that to raise money or entertain. We entertained the camps, the town club and other business professional women's club furnished entertainment at the camp for that, and I did go down with that.
Where was the camp?
South. Well, I guess it's what's Tinkerfield.
In Midwest City?
Yeah, when the Midwest City started out, wasn't very much city. It's mostly grassland, but then it became a city. We'd go down and do furnished entertainment as far as we could. And then the lawyers also gave advice to in different places for soldiers that needed it.
Right. When they called up the National Guard in 1916 to go chase Pancho Villa, did you have anything to do with that?
The National Guard for what?
When they called up the National Guard in 1916 to go on the Mexican border.
No, I don't remember having anything to do with that.
Okay. But that was when Pancho Villa raided in Columbus, New Mexico, and they sent John J. Pershing down to...
I remember he did, but I didn't have any part in that I know of, which I remember of.
Right. What's your opinion of the law profession in Oklahoma today?
I'm very proud of the profession and what our lawyers are doing. I think they're very necessary. My brother-in-law was very disappointed when I took the bar examination in 1912 that I didn't get I turned down the bird dog. I guess you know that in 1912 I got the highest grade, and Swank, who was clerk of the Supreme Court, was in the habit of giving a bird dog to the person who did get the highest grade. He didn't anticipate it going to a gal. So he called me and said, if you don't want the dog, I'll give you $25. Well, $25 looked like a mint to me, and I was glad to get it. But my brother-in-law was very disappointed because he's quite a quail hunter.
Mm-hmm. What was your salary when you first began practicing law?
$30 a month, $15 every 2 weeks. And not when I was practicing law, when I went in as stenographer.
Oh, the stenographer.
Yeah. But when in 1912, I got up to, I think it was about $150 a month. That is big money then.
Mm-hmm.
Now, university the students get $1,500 a week, and I did well to get $1,500 a year.
Mm.
Then after a while, I got a percent of certain cases. There'd be a salary, and then I'd get a division if we had made good money.
Do you have any comments about just your law profession, what you've done? Anything you'd like to tell me? Any general comments?
I'm mighty grateful that there are so many women who are able to go in and desire to try cases. It is very nerve-wracking. And I think it's difficult for a woman to become an efficient trial lawyer because it takes 10 to 15 years to become very efficient. And by that time she's sort of tired. But some of them succeed, so I'm grateful they can.
What's your opinion of ERA?
I'm not for it.
You're not for it?
I started out when it was first suggested and presented as just equality for women. I was for that. But after I realized what that second section that gives control to Congress over it means, I knew that if the amendment ever passed, it would create more trouble and chaos than it cured.
What was your idea on women's suffrage?
Oh, I wanted to vote. I had curiosity enough to vote. But I never did join in any marches to get the privilege. I think women ought to vote. And I want women to get equal pay for equal work or be given opportunities so far as they're capable of giving the service.
Mm-hmm.
But it should come from acceptance of the people, not from a law that says you must give a woman this or a woman that.
Oh, I think we've covered most of the topics, I believe. Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to say? Any remarks for posterity?
I'm just not really exciting person. I had become interested in genealogy because I worked that up for my family, and I belonged to, of course, the DAR and colonial dames of the 17th century, daughters of the American colonists, had become interested in that kind of work.
How far have you traced your family back?
Well, on Father's Connecticut relatives, I'd trace some of them back to the 1300s. And I'm trying to trace to somebody on Barons of Runnymede to help establish Magna Carta. In fact, we had two ancestors that were supposed to have been descendants of the Barons of Runnymede, and I was so proud of myself that an enterprising researcher in England discovered that there was some fakery in Queen Elizabeth's time in the Heralds of York, and that the Spencer family and the Seymour family that I thought or that we were supposed to, or that we came from, they found that the connection from 1300 back was a fake. A number of women had joined under that faked ancestry record. Now I've got to hunt up somebody else.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, Miss Sturdevant, I've really enjoyed this, talking to you.
Well, thank you, but it seemed to me like it's so uninteresting, it's hardly worth your trouble.
Every person has a story to tell, and every person's a part of Oklahoma. And
well, it was mighty generous of Mr. Kahn to think about having you come.
And
but I just don't know anything sensational. I just go from day to day.
Like I said, I think you're a very sensational person.
Well, I'm telling you, I should have paid more attention to myself when I tried to step up on the curbing as I crossed the street into the building. And I fell down about 10 days ago, and I'll be glad when I get straightened out there and don't have to use this quad cane.
Mm-hmm.
It taught me that I probably hadn't been sufficiently grateful for my good legs that I've been using all these 92 years.
Mm-hmm. When is your birthday?
September 10th. I was 92 last September 10th.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for going to all this trouble.